Marvel's What If is one of the trippiest, craziest, weirdest things to ever happen in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And it was very well received by both diehard and casual MCU fans, but it wasn't without controversy. Today, I'm joined by the show's head writer and executive producer, AC Bradley, to answer the question that is on everyone's mind. Why were they so obsessed with killing Tony Stark? This is Tatooine Sons.
It's true. All of it.
What is the name of the Porg on the Millennium Falcon?
Force is strong in my family.
What do you think his name is? It's a big moment.
I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
Maybe Turbis?
Do or do not. There is no try.
Turbis? Pablo, if you're listening to this live stream, that Porg's name is now Turbis. It's a good Star Wars name.
We're not done yet.
These guys recorded an awesome podcast called Tatooine Sons. Everybody was lit.
Welcome to Tatooine Sons, the only fan podcast to name an official Star Wars creature and to be endorsed by the writer and the director of The Last Jedi, Rian Johnson. We believe that pop culture is the mythology of this generation, that there is a story, it is written on our souls, and that these myths speak to that story. And that is why I am honored to be joined this week by AC Bradley. AC Bradley has written for some of your favorite shows, including Trollhunters, Three Below, Arrow, and of course, Marvel's What If. She's won multiple Emmy Awards, and what's amazing about this is she's just getting started. I asked AC to try to describe the moment she got the call that she was going to be leading the team that would write the first ever animated series in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
It was kind of funny because it's a long build-up. I had met with the guys over time, like for years, met with Nate and Jonathan and all of them, and I pitched to Kevin actually a couple times earlier on other projects. So when this one was actually going to go, I was like, oh, this is not what I ever expected to be doing at Marvel, but I was super excited and honored. And obviously before they give you the call being like, hey, we want to do this, you have a couple of meetings and pitches. But I will say my pitch to Kevin and Lou to do the show was probably one of the best pitches I've ever had. And I kind of came out of that meeting being like, I think I got this. There was a
What's
moment,
that period like, though, between that pitch meeting when you're like, I just nailed a pitch to Kevin Feige, and then you're waiting for the call to come? What's that period like for you?
there was this weirdness of like, what the, like, I was telling my manager at the time, I was like, I think I got this. And I'm usually, she's like, you're usually a pretty good read. Because I've come out of pitch meetings and been like, that's not going to happen. And she's like, no, you did great. I'm like, it ain't happening. But this one, there was a moment where Lou leaned over to Kevin. He's like, we got to go. We have another meeting. And he looked at me. He's like, well, I got 5 minutes, right? And they went, yeah. Lou went, yeah. And then he looked at me and he went, can you give me one more story in 5 minutes?
Oh, wow.
And I went, yeah. And I pitched him an episode that we ended up not doing. But I was like, this man is way too important, way too busy.
Yeah, to sit there and say, give me another 5 minutes. I got nothing else going on in my life right now.
I was like, right? So I walked out of the room going, I think I just got this job. And I was super pleasantly surprised. And then there was about a couple of days after that, I got a phone call from Brad Winderbaum's. At the time, she was actually an associate producer on the show. Simona Paparelli called me. She's like, they want you to come into the office. Can you be here in an hour? And I was literally getting my knee physical therapy. And I was like, whoa. I can, but I'm in like gym shorts and like sneakers and my knee is taped up real weird. Like, what is this? And she laughed. She went, they cut a rough animatic trailer that they're going to show at Disney Plus. I want you to see it first. And I was like,
wow.
I was like, yeah, I got this. And I walked into the building like with my knee of weird tape all over it with a slight limp.
That's not the way you envisioned this moment happening when you were manifesting these things into the universe, right?
Yeah. I think everyone expects like Hollywood to be a little bit more glamorous. I was like, no, I was like, I'm in sneakers. They're like, that's fine as long as it's not flip flops because of on all movie lots, like no matter where you are, there's a no flip flop rule because of just production and injuries.
Got it. So you were like, I can't wear flip flops to this because I won't be allowed on this. I've
done that for years. It's a kind of when I was an assistant in PA, you learn never wear flip flops, just because the idea is you never know when you're going to end up on a soundstage,
right? And
flip flops on a soundstage because of all the equipment can be dangerous.
That's funny. So you're in that 5 minutes where he gave you that extra time to pitch the episode or the idea that never happened.
No, it was I pitched a Pepper and Tony in the Odyssey story we just ended up doing a different Tony episode.
A different Tony episode. We'll talk about Tony. We've got questions about your choices on that, but we'll come to that. We'll come back to that in a second. All right. I know we can't talk at all about season 2 of What If because of 1,000 different reasons, but I'm 100% sure that there are going to be lots of twists and turns in it because season 1 was absolutely full of them. Was there a moment when you were sitting in that proverbial writer's room and pitching ideas, and you guys were all talking about all the different ideas for season 1, and there was an idea that was pitched and you just thought, I don't know if we're ever going to be able to pull that off. It might be absolutely too crazy. Was there a moment like that?
There is an episode coming up in season 2, which was like, whoa, that is a very different episode for Marvel, and I'm very excited to see it. I can't say anything else.
No, I know. I will
say that I'm also very proud. It's written by Ryan Little, who had started off as on season 1 as our writing assistant / secret extra staff writer, and this is going to be, I think, his first credit. So wow. I'm super proud of that episode, just because he wrote it and he's now become a very good friend. There were a couple ones, like you always have those joke pitches, like, can we do Dinosaur Avengers? And it's like, no, it's not. It's too silly. You always get those end of the day pitches. You're like, hear me out. Should we try this? It's like, no. And every once in a while, you'll start trying to pitch an episode, like you're just kind of coming up with an idea. And then you go, oh, wait a minute, that's one of the movies. Okay, not doing that.
So was there a moment when you guys were having those conversations where an idea came up from season 1, where it was just like everybody sort of leaned in a little bit more? We're like, okay, now that one's really cool and interesting. Like you were having everybody started to get a little bit more excited about that. What was that one?
Probably it was the T'Challa episode. That was an early one we came up with. So there's an artist, a graphic designer named 100. I think her business name is 100 Soft. And she had done this poster, which features like little miniature emoji heads of all the Marvel characters. And one of the IT guys, Chris, had it in his office. We basically stole it. And we had it. And we used to basically go through every single character. And then we had a timeline up. We had a bunch of resources. But at one point we were looking at it. And there was a moment where we're like, how old was Peter Quill? And how old would any of the other Marvel characters have been at the same time? Like, was anyone else close to his age? And there was a moment like, well, T'Challa would have been about 9 or 10 years old back then. And there's just, you could feel
there you go.
I was like, this is funny. And I was like, and I think that I immediately went, I was like, we have to have the line, all humans look the same.
Right.
I was like, that has to be in it. And it was just this, okay, there's something there. So that was one of the first times we were like, there's a story here. I'm trying to think of another episode. The zombies one actually came from me at the 11th hour. We had typed up all these ideas, and it had gotten to the point that we'd on this document, we had 28 great ideas. I was like, or 27. And we're like, if we can get to 30, it just looks better. And I threw in
That's
zombies.
slightly OCD part of you that makes you successful, right?
It's just like, it would look a little better at 30. I was like, we can cut it down to 25, but why lose a couple of gems? I was like, frick. So there's a couple of episodes I threw in, like, I was just like, what if we do this? And one was a zombies episode. I was like, Walking Dead is somewhat popular. And also knowing Robert Kirkland had done the famous zombies run, and we put it on the list. And even our EP, Brad, was like, I don't know if Kevin's going to go for that one, but you never know. Keep it on the list. And Kevin surprised us. He went, yeah, that's what we're doing. He said, that's such a cult hit, and the fans would love it so much. We're doing zombies. I'm sitting there going, all we have is literally the 2 sentences I wrote into this document. I was like, they're zombies. No idea what happens next.
That's crazy. We'll talk more about Doctor Strange. That zombie stuff, it seems to be becoming more and more important. And I know that you don't have anything to do with Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, but there's some zombie stuff happening in that. So we may come back to that in a minute. But before we do that, I've got to ask this question, because everyone who knows Tatooine Sons knows that my Iron Man is my oldest son, Sam's absolutely favorite MCU character. It was his inspiration. Seeing the original Iron Man, he walks out and he says, I want to put stuff in space, Dad. And now he's a junior studying aerospace engineering. And so Iron Man and Tony Stark are his dude. But during season 1, he wasn't all that happy with all of you involved in writing this season, because I've got to ask, if he was here right now, he'd ask it himself. What's your problem with Tony Stark?
Okay. Me and Sam probably have a lot more in common. I saw Iron Man back when I was in my early 20s. I had gone to USC Film School, and I was very young in my program. I was one of the youngest. I was actually the youngest in my program. And at the time, they were very encouraging me to write these indie scripts, like these, and apply to Sundance Labs. And I was doing that, and I was writing these indie scripts. And being a young female writer, you're especially kind of pushed toward, like, especially back then, rom-coms.
Okay. Why
don't you write rom-coms? And I'm like, I don't really know how to write a rom-com. And then I was an assistant in the industry. So that means you're working like 60 hours a week. And I had went out on a Friday night with, at the time, my best friend, Andy. And this is not a great story for me. So we had a few drinks. I would leave my car parked at my boss's office. Like, I would just leave the car at the office and then go for drinks with her. Then end up back at my boss's office, sleep on his couch for a couple of hours, drive home. And I'd done that. And I wake up the next day, and I'm not hungover, but I'm definitely like, I have to stop having nights where I'm out till 3 a.m. and then sleeping on a couch to 8 a.m. And now it's like noon, and she gives me a text, and she's like, do you want to go see Iron Man at the ArcLight at 2? And I was just like, I'm supposed to be writing. Yeah, I'll see you at 2. So I show up at 2, and we watch the movie, and I literally came out of that movie going, that's what I want to write.
Oh, wow.
Screw indie dramas, screw rom-coms. I love growing up, and you can link it to character. That's it. And we walked down Sunset talking to the In-N-Out Burger. And I remember just sitting there going, that's all I want to do. This is it.
Oh, wow.
And I wrote a pilot, which was my first kind of action adventure pilot. And that script got me into the Fox writing program. It ended up being optioned by Warner Brothers and CW and Silver Pictures. And it was kind of my first real credit, my first thing that kind of launched my career. And it was me coming out of that going, that's what I want to do. And by the way, that pilot script, it was called Velocity Girl, is about a woman who's 22, who drinks a bit too much, who has nothing figured out in her life, who then discovers she was genetically engineered to be a super soldier. I was joked it was if Jason Bourne was a failure of a sorority girl.
Oh, that's
but it
cool.
Came from watching that movie. Now, as for the show.
So basically you're saying that your entire career is built off of making bad life choices in your 20s.
know bad, but definitely dubious ones.
Some questionable moments, right?
Oh yeah, there's some good stories from those days. Some great stories,
which is common because that's Hollywood, right? That's everybody in Hollywood's got those. So
yeah, I think it's everyone who's young. You don't realize in your 20s that like you're waiting for your real life to begin, and it's like, no, these are going to be some of the best days of your life. Being absolutely broke,
right,
and hanging out with your friends and sleeping on your boss's couch because you have to live in like the area because that's where the rent is low, and it's all that. So as far as Tony Stark and Iron Man. The missing episode, as the lovely people on Twitter have dubbed it, features Tony. Features Iron Man. There was a Lego set floating around, which will tell you more about that episode. So there is a Tony-centric episode. Due to the pandemic, we had some issues with the animation houses. Everyone had issues. And so the animation for that episode, and keep in mind it takes about 12 to 14 months to animate an episode, was going to be a little longer. And it left Marvel with two choices, which was push the entire season, which felt no one really wanted to do.
No, that would have been terrible.
Push that episode to season 2.
Wow. So you guys all do love Tony Stark, but what was it like when you guys were like, when these episodes came out and you started realizing, did you guys think ahead of time that, wait, we killed him in this episode and now we're killing him in this episode and we killed him in the episode before that. And all of a sudden he's dying in every episode. Did you guys like realize that ahead of time? Or was it just as the episodes were coming out and fans were reacting that you guys realized, wait a second, he is dying in every episode that we're in?
I hadn't realized that because the decision to push that episode only came a couple of weeks before or a couple of months before we dropped. I was worried. I had noticed in the writer's room, I was like, we kill the Hulk a lot.
Nobody cares.
I was like, should someone send Bruce, poor Mark Ruffalo a text saying, sorry, we kill you in horrific ways. And
he blows up, all this.
Yeah. We're not too sure if he survives zombies, but damn, that's not a great final shot for the man. I was like, and then with Ultron, I was like, should we? I was like, just someone tell Ruffalo that I love, you can count on me. So that was the one I was worried about anything. And I felt that when people started pointing it out on Twitter, I was like, oh yeah, that's true. Because we never looked at it that way. Because the Tony episode, because it revolves around Tony, is a little lighter and it's more fun and it's a little bit more akin to the comedy episodes. So I honestly it hadn't crossed my mind, but I do apologize. And I too love Tony Stark.
That's funny. It is hilarious that your inspiration for doing the work that you're doing came from watching Iron Man, and then you just had this obsession and you didn't even realize it with killing the guy over and over again. But that's the way it is.
Yeah, it's funny.
It's funny to think about how the decision to scrap a single episode of season 1 of What If resulted in a fan reaction to the rest of the episodes that no one could have anticipated. It's almost as if life is imitating art. One choice changed the entire timeline. I wonder, what if they had decided to delay the series another year and release it with that episode? We'll never know. We'll get back to our conversation with AC Bradley in just a minute, but before we do that, here is your chance to change your story by joining the fellowship that we've initiated around the Hero's Journal. We've begun a quest to better ourselves and our lives through this amazing tool that uses the power of stories and scientifically proven productivity techniques to help fans like us take control of the story that we tell ourselves. So remember this, changing our story takes small changes over a period of time. It's not about giant moments of inspiration. It's about small, consistent actions. And the Hero's Journal provides a fun and powerful way of taking those steps. And you can join our fellowship for free. Just head over to theheroesjournal.co/pages/Tatooine Sons to download a digital version of the first act of the Hero's Journal and begin your quest today. AC Bradley hasn't been involved in the production of Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness in any way. So I want to be clear about that. She doesn't have any idea what the story is or anything about the characters. but it's hard for an MCU fan to watch that trailer and not think that the writers of the film didn't take at least some inspiration from the ideas in season 1 of What If. The question that inspired that trippy and dark Doctor Strange episode was, what if Doctor Strange lost his heart instead of his hands? I asked AC, what's the thought process that she and her amazing team of writers went through in coming up with these scenarios?
It came together fairly quickly, but there was the idea first of, well, honestly, the director wanted a bit of a wizard fight. He wanted his Harry Potter wizard fight. And so the first idea was, well, Wanda and Doctor Strange. And then that was kind of nixed because I don't know if it had anything to do with the movie coming, because this is back in October of 2018 we're talking about.
Wow.
But they were like, well, Wanda's going to get her own show. So let's not give her, we only have 9 to 10 episodes. Let's not give her also a showcase here.
Okay.
Which made sense. It's also why we don't do a completely Loki-centric or Falcon-centric episode. It's like they are already getting their own series. Spread the wealth. And then there was this idea of like doing a Strange. I'm trying to think. There was like because it was about time travel, and I'd written time loop episodes on Trollhunters and 3 Below, which had came out well. And I was like, well, I know how to do that kind of construction. So the thing is like, what's the anchor? And I always thought the relationship between Strange and Christine was fascinating. And obviously in a movie didn't get as much screen time. The other inspiration for that episode was at the time I was going through a weird process in grief myself. I lost a family member in my early 20s, my cousin, and I had went through all the 5 stages of grief and seen a therapist and all those things you do. And now I was in my 30s and I found myself feeling a lot of those feelings again, because what you don't realize when you lose someone, especially young, and we were both very young, I age, but he doesn't. I get older, but my memories of him are frozen he's at age 24 when he passed away. And I was talking to my therapist, how Hollywood of that to say. And I was like, I want to go back in time because now I know so much more. I know I have resources. I can do so much. At the time when he passed away, I was 20 and I was a kid myself. And she went, that's normal. You want to go back, but you can't go back in time. You got to kind of accept who you were back then and forgive yourself for anything you couldn't do and kind of let go of that. And I was like, that's kind of interesting because no one tells you that the grief process is going to kind of restart again or can restart again. And that's where I kind of wanted to play with in Doctor Strange. I was like, it's kind of like he's already accomplished so much. He's gotten the time stone. He's defeated Dormammu, but you're still feeling that loss from a couple of years prior in the story. Like, and if you could actually go back in time, if you could take the resources you have now and go save that life, would you? And of course, we can't, and Doctor Strange also shouldn't.
You know, it's funny how we one of the things about the way that we do our show and the purpose kind of behind the show. Yeah, it's a dad and his 2 sons kind of geeking out about all these things that we love so much. But really what it's become over the 4 years is where we end up using Marvel and Star Wars and DC and all of these things that we love talking about. We use those as ways to kind of have conversations about what we call the greater story, the bigger things. And it's kind of like what you're just facing on that. How has storytelling helped you deal with loss and joy and all of those different types of things and these bigger issues? How does your storytelling help you kind of navigate through all those things?
I mean, that's one of the perks of being a writer is that you get to kind of work through a lot of thoughts on the page. And oftentimes, actually, stories are reflections of what you've already kind of been through. Or they can kind of be, you realize you're writing your secret hopes and dreams. I had a moment where at the beginning of the pandemic, I found out that due to other medical reasons, my doctors weren't too sure if I could have children.
Oh my goodness.
And let me also first off say, right now there's a 1-year-old in the other room.
That's awesome.
But there was a dark moment where I was like, what do I do? It's a pandemic. It's a pandemic and I'm single. And they're saying you probably have a 6 to 12 month window that your fertility is dropping just a lot faster than anyone expected. And I was very lucky because of those previous health issues. I had went for testing, although it was a little on the younger side for it. And they were able to find this. So I had this I was talking with one of my best friends on Zoom because it's the day 2 of the pandemic going crying. I was like, I don't ever become a mom. And she went, oh, my actual name's Ashley. And she went, if Ashley Bradley wants to be a mom, Ashley Bradley becomes a mom. You figure you figure it out. That's what you do. And I was like, oh, that's such a good speech. I'm going to be using that somewhere. And it was this moment of like, you write about people like taking on demons and aliens and punching Nazis. Why are you scared of this? Why are you scared to like fight for what you want? Are you going to sit back and be like, well, that's my fertility gone. I'm never going to. It's like, F no, I get what I want. And thanks to science and a lot of good luck, I have a beautiful 1-year-old daughter. And she's awesome. The most amazing thing in the world. But it was this moment of like, I literally make a living telling stories about how you stand up for what you think is right. You stand up for the life you want, for the world you want. And here I am crying on a Zoom call. I was like, you know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to take the leap.
It's awesome. What a cool story. Why do you love writing stories about Marvel and Arrow? I know that we kind of talked about that with the Iron Man story and how you got launched into this, but why these types of stories versus, you were being pushed in certain directions and things like that? Why these types of crazy superheroes and all of those things?
I love genre movies and genre storytelling, television and feature, for 2 reasons. One, the visceral nature of it. These stories are designed to make you feel and feel fast. You be scared, be excited, to clap and applause, to laugh. There's just something. I'm not one for the slow burn. I want to feel, like if I'm sitting down, give me something, get me excited, give me an emotion. The other thing that I love about genre storytelling that Marvel has excelled at is able to tell a very human story and miss the bombs and the explosions and the car chases. Like I love Tony because I relate to him. My early 20s were marked with loss and often acting out. We love Steve Rogers because he brings out the best in us. He's a good man because of his good heart, not because of his muscles. We relate to these characters and we follow their journeys amongst all the booms and explosions. And that's what I love about genre storytelling is that we can tell good character stories. Ask audiences, do you see yourself reflected here? Despite the aliens and the magic and the wizards, are you still Peter Quill? Are you a kid who lost their mother young and kind of is stuck forever at the age of 10? Like we see ourselves. Are you T'Challa, who's living under the mantle of a father who is a good man and you strive to be him, although he's not in the world anymore and you're carrying that loss? That's what I love about genre storytelling. It's what I love about Marvel, and the same of Star Wars. We relate to these characters, and that's why they endure. And as you guys talk about, like, that's why we carry them with us. They've become our touchstone for culture, for understanding ourselves.
I love how AC talks about the way that these stories are so important. Kids growing up without parents, a doctor dealing with the terror of losing the use of his hands, or even worse, the love of his life, or a selfish, egotistical playboy billionaire who transforms into someone who saves the world. These stories teach us about what we truly value and we want to see in the world. And AC Bradley has a lot more stories to tell. Can't wait to hear and see those. I want to thank AC for joining me this week on Tatooine Sons. Please check out all of the series that she's been a part of, including Trollhunters and Three Below. And from what she said about season 2, I think there are some even more shocking stories coming at the end of this year. And thank you for listening to Tatooine Sons of Pop Culture podcast. If you enjoyed this interview, please take a moment to rate and review the show on your podcast app of choice. Make sure you hit that follow or subscribe button on your app so you get every episode the moment it drops. Next week, we are going to talk about some Moon Knight. We're going to find some Star Wars to talk about, and hopefully we'll have some time this weekend to catch up on Halo and share some of those ideas. Make sure you follow the show so you don't miss a single episode. And while you're at it, follow Tatooine Sons on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. Share this episode with somebody else. It's absolutely the best way for you to help the show grow. I think that's going to do it for this week. There's only one thing left to say.
May the Force be with you always.
This party's over.
I like that Wookiee.
Don't get technical with me.
Joy, please.
Yep, yep.